the Texas Talks podcast. I'm your host, Brad Swale. Today, I'm joined with Senator Jose Menendez of District 26 here in Texas. That is mostly, all of Bexar County and San Antonio and all the small cities there, small towns. He's been the senator since 2015. Some of his achievements have been in the education and healthcare, as well as passing over 200 bills that benefit children, seniors, and veterans. Senator Menendez, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Brad?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to get to speak with you. It's always fun to have these conversations with lawmakers and people that are, working for their communities. And I know that you're no different. So, I gave kind of a brief intro of what you do, but can you give us more idea of who you are?
Sure. First and foremost, I think we're all a sum of all of our life experiences. And for many of us, when you have immigrant parents, many of whom, like my parents, English is their second language. And for my parents, they came over as adults. You see a lot of struggles, a lot of 6 and 7 day work weeks, and just doing everything you can to make ends meet, and making sure that your children work as hard as they can to get the best education they can. And they do, and they provide every opportunity they can to give you a good education. And so, my parents, I think their work ethic and their love of this country, and becoming citizens as soon as they could, and voting every election, kind of instilled a debt of gratitude that we all have for our community, for our city, for our state, and our country.
Yeah. And certainly raising a state senator is certainly an achievement, I would say, for your parents. Absolutely.
They never intended on that. They're just glad that I had the desire to give back to the community. And this wasn't a master plan, but we ended up here just through public service, starting at a young age.
Sure. And I think, I'm a parent, and, you talk about master plans for children. I find that all of my master plans quickly fall by the wayside, and you just kind of got to roll with it and see how it goes. Just do your best. So seems like your parents did good one way or the other. I know that this is probably not something that a lot of people are aware of in the state of Texas. I'm sure that there's, people in our circles maybe know it more intimately, but there's a lot of stuff that happens between legislatures. Y'all meet every couple of years for several months, but there's interim charges. And so you're actually in Austin doing work, and there's been some interim charges, some interim hearings. The Senate State Affairs Committee had an interim hearing on Delta 8 and Delta 9 bans. And I'm wondering how you feel about that. It seems like out of nowhere, almost out of nowhere, it seemed like all of a sudden at gas stations, at various shops around town, all of a sudden I could purchase some THC gummies or vapes or whatever. And I was kind of confused when it happened. Well, I thought this was illegal in Texas, but I guess because of the hemp bill at certain weights and all that stuff. But now they're taking a second look at it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I think the reality is that people need to know that, whatever is available in the market is supposed to be limited in the amount of THC that it has in it. It's not supposed to be over any sort of concentration. We didn't legalize cannabis in any way, shape, or form. But what has happened, because the hemp and the cannabis sometimes are so indistinguishable, even through lab work, that sometimes there was an inadvertent or net effect of somehow making it legal. And so therefore now there's a desire to push back and make everything illegal. But I think that is not the right answer. I don't think that any kind of gummy of any kind that has any type of adverse effect should be available to children. I think these products, like alcohol, should be 21 and over and should be heavily regulated. One of the concerns I have is that without regulation, you don't know exactly what is in these, whether they be gummies, whether they be vapes, whether they be whatever the vehicle of this Delta 8 or 9 or 10 is. You without regulation, you really don't know what you're getting. And I think that's critically important, that we regulate and determine what responsible adults are thinking that they're getting, that they do get what they believe they're getting.
Yeah. So it sounds like some of your colleagues are saying all this needs to go away. It needs to be we need to go back to square one. It needs to be banned.
Mhm.
You're saying that there's, well, hold on, maybe let's just regulate it. Well, it seems like things are, we don't want children taking it, obviously, and whatever you buy, we want people to know what they're buying. What is the argument that they're making from from what you hear to go back to square one, to banning it? Are there a rash of, I don't know, crimes or accidents or something like that that's happening from this?
If there are, I'm not aware. I haven't heard of anything like that. I think for some, they may just be frustrated and upset that they feel like people took advantage of a situation and pushed the envelope and did something, that really wasn't the intent of the legislature.
Yeah.
I know that when my colleague Chairman Charles Perry passed the bill, his intention was to legalize hemp for agricultural purposes, textile purposes, how hemp could be used in fabrics and ropes and lots of different other agriculture uses, never with the intention to see this explosion in what we see now, whether they're vape shops or whatever they call themselves, but of this Delta 8 and 9 product that is proliferating all over the state. I mean, it almost feels like there are more vape shops than there are anything else that you see on any corner, on any given corner. And that was never the intention.
Yeah. And so, I mean, how do what was the result? I believe that the hearings they've ended. Is that correct? So
Correct.
what was the final thought going out of those hearings? Does it seem like it's going to go back to square one, or is there going to be some sort of middle ground, like I would describe what you're suggesting as a middle ground, just more
Yeah,
regular?
I can't tell you. Well, in committee hearings, when we're in an interim hearing, there's not any actual, what's the word I'm looking for, definitive. We can't pass any legislation, so there's not any way to put the genie back in the bottle as
Sure.
of now. And anything to try to make to take it back to square one, as you've mentioned, would require legislation to be passed. I've heard that this industry is in the billions of dollars, and I understand, like every industry, there's probably very good actors, not so good actors, and lots in between.
Yeah.
And so I think that I would assume that people who've built businesses and taken up leases and hired people are going to make their pleas to the legislature to find, probably, if they're smart, a middle ground, a ground that says we want this to be highly regulated by the state. We are willing to pay the taxes we should be paying on them that are fair. We only want consenting, responsible adults to have access to this, and in that way, knowing that the product they're selling is a high quality product that adults can understand. I think without Texas, short of Texas making cannabis legal, this may be the best way to sort of undercut the illegal market for cannabis.
Yeah.
And if you have a legal option and people don't want to get in trouble, and you'd rather do that than take narcotics if you're suffering from pain, or you'd rather do that than drink alcohol. Just like Governor Abbott talks all the time about, responsible adults being allowed to own whatever gun they want because they're consenting, legal, responsible adults.
Yeah.
We should show all adults that same level of respect and independence, that they know best what's best for them. It just seems a little hypocritical that they can walk into a liquor store and load up on as much liquor as they want, and no one says anything.
Yeah, liquor stores even stayed open during the pandemic. And it feels like there's a, you know, a border aspect to this. The cartels, certainly a lot of, marijuana, there's illegal activity around marijuana. And if there was a legal option, I don't know that it would totally get rid of the illegal black market. I don't think that's what's happened necessarily in California or other places, but it certainly makes it less appealing, right? If I was wanting to buy that, I would rather buy it from a store that, can tell me what exactly I'm buying than some guy on a corner. Um, and so I wonder if that argument resonates at all with the people that are talking about going back to square one.
I haven't had that discussion as of yet, but I hope that hopefully law enforcement gets involved.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I say that, I think it's important for, by the time the session rolls around, we will have enough time under our belt to be able to compare what was it like before and since then,
Yeah.
and where are we? You know, I I have concerns, but I also have concerns that once the state has allowed inadvertently, not on purpose, but
Yeah.
it has allowed this flood of all this Delta 8, 9, 10 product all over the state, in every corner of the state. If you were to say all of a sudden overnight, it's now illegal, I don't think, just like prohibition didn't make alcohol go away, it just went underground into the
Yeah.
speakeasies, into the back rooms, into the moonshine places. I think that it would do the same thing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all you're doing is giving people who prefer to traffic in the illegal markets more product,
Yeah. Certainly more customers.
customers, more product, and it means less for the state in terms of for taxpayers to decrease their personal commitment to paying for roads and schools and all the things that our taxes go to. When you have people voluntarily paying a tax for something that they want, a service or a product, they're helping pay for to offset the cost to all of us who say, that's not for me. And look, I've never vaped anything.
Yeah.
So this isn't about me, but this is about me observing the current situation and what I think it could be like if we just all of a sudden decided to make it illegal overnight. The product wouldn't go away and it would be sold somehow, some way. And to be honest, a lot of these vape shops already limit the people that can go into them to 21 or over.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now, if you've got people selling it out of their backpack, do you really think they're going to be carding people on who buys and who doesn't buy?
I,
So
in my experience, no. So what is I mean, you talk about, I'm a parent of three children, and the last thing I want my kids to do, and gosh, I sound so square saying this, knowing what I thought when I was a teenager, if one of my kids was vaping at school or something like that, marijuana, THC, Delta 8, 9, 10, whatever the case may be, I would be really not happy, let's just say, at least. Um, what is and I mean, it seems like they do it in middle school now. Ugh, whatever. There should be more regulation. I'm wondering what the consequences should be. If someone should it be worse than alcohol? Should it be similar to alcohol selling to an underage, to a minor? The mental effects. I'm wondering how you feel about that. If you've thought about it.
I'm open to that. I have not thought about, what happens, because my assumption is that everybody who walks in gets carded.
Yeah.
I do worry about establishments that this isn't their only business. Let's say when people say, I see them in the gas station, I do have a worry that maybe the gas attendant is, maybe paid minimum wage, and, when they throw down gummies and chips and whatever else they're throwing down, that maybe at that point that there isn't as much vigilance,
Yeah.
because it's not their only business,
Yeah.
and it's one of many products that they're throwing down. Whereas in a vape shop, if we were to regulate all of these shops and we were to regulate the product that's inside, and every one of them would have to have some sort of state stamp like you do on cigarettes. And then just like we do on cigarettes, we tax the heck out of them so that we can offset the expense of trying to help people get off of the product, and we can offset the health expenses and offset all these other costs, social ills to the state. Maybe we could do that. And maybe we could also find ways to communicate in a way that makes sense to young people about why you wouldn't want to do this. But Brad, what's even more concerning to me right now, because you said it yourself, we all know that young people are vaping today.
Yeah.
What we don't know is, and there have been studies that have found heavy metals in this vape liquid, have found chemicals in this vape liquid. We really don't know 100% of the time what's in that vape liquid that they're buying today because there's no regulation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean it's something that I've thought about when I see other people doing it, and I just wonder, what is it? What is in there? Is it just are you just getting the liquid? Or are there components of the device that they're using that's maybe, I mean, it's heat and maybe plastic, and are you inhaling? I don't know. It's kind of, I think there's a lot of unknowns there for sure. So the Senate State Affairs Committee also met over the interim, talking about responsible investing, uh, like ESG and pensions and stuff like that. I'm wondering how that went. Also, social media and protecting children, which I think is probably going to be a big issue in the next 89th legislature. Where are you on those issues? How did those hearings go?
I didn't get a chance to make that State Affairs Committee hearing. I'm not sure. My
It's
wife's
okay.
health not the greatest, but I'm familiar with the two issues because we've been discussing those issues for some time. Um, and I mean, and not only are we discussing them here, they're being discussed in Washington. And I do believe that we need to do whatever we can to protect young people. Look, young people are getting access to the internet and on these phones and social media at a younger and younger age. I
Yeah.
mean, I obviously didn't have a smartphone until they didn't come out till I was way out of college. But the point is, even our children, it was probably high school or later that they had access. But now it's kids, middle school for sure,
Yeah.
sometimes even elementary.
Yeah.
And you see little children on iPads and iPhones, just glued, their faces glued to these things. We needed to do a better job of making sure that we can somehow help parents police what's coming through that device to their children.
Yeah.
I'm worried about it. I've worked on legislation that address cyberbullying because, look, you're much younger than I am, but when I left school when I was growing up, you left your bully at school.
Yeah.
You went home and you had a safe space. You had your mom and dad, maybe, your mom was there, maybe your dad,
Yeah.
or they got home eventually. You had your friends, in the neighborhood, and you did things. Maybe you rode your bike, played something, did your homework, but it wasn't like you were continuously glued to a device that brought your bully into your house. You
Yeah.
weren't constantly living with people criticizing you and making you feel like you just didn't live up to the norms or expectations. You weren't cool. You're weird looking, or you sound weird. Whatever these kids, they find any reason to pick on each other. We need to give kids a way to escape and have a safe space.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I definitely think we need to be doing something to that effect.
They
Um,
they they pick on me because I don't have any hair. So, you know,
Man, you carry it well, brother. I mean, my 17-year-old wants me to shave, and I'm sitting here watching. I'm thinking, well, maybe it wouldn't be that bad.
just you gotta accept it. Whatever it looks like, you just gotta live with it and wear it with pride. That's no big deal. That's how you do it. I bet you'd look great with it. Do it.
That,
So it
I
always
did
grows
it
back.
once.
It grows back if you want it to.
Yeah, well,
So I know that there's talk about banning social media in public schools, or banning cell phones. I'm sorry, in public schools, which I guess in turn would also maybe ban social media to a great extent. Is that something that you think that you would support?
I don't I don't know just yet, and I'll tell you why.
Sure.
Every parent, when they're dropping their child off, says, "Hey, text me when you get out," or "Text me this," or we're used to being able to communicate with our kids instantly, almost.
Yeah.
And many of us, we hear of some tragedy occurring, and in that moment, we want to know our kids are okay.
Yeah.
And so, I think it would be really hard, probably harder on the parents to know that they couldn't get in touch with their children right away.
Yeah.
I can't speak for everyone, but I think
Sure.
so. One of the things that I think there's a sort of a almost we try to find a common sense, a common ground that we could achieve. And maybe what we could say is, when you come into the classroom, your phone goes in a cubby with your name or your number, or you're assigned with your desk is, and that phone goes in there. So you don't have your phone while you're in class so you can pay attention.
Yeah.
But the moment, you're in between classes, you grab your phone, you go to your next class.
Yeah.
So if you look at your phone, mom, dad texted you something, a question, or you texted them, "Hey, I forgot my shoes for practice. I forgot my shorts for PE. I've got last period. I don't want to get in trouble." You could still get that message out. And so these are things that sometimes happen. And I just think that maybe that's the better way, because at some point the kid's going to access social media at some point in the day.
Yeah.
Uh, do is it better to limit their time on the devices? Yes, I agree, but I'm not sure if 100% banning them being in the school. I think you'd still find that kids would take them in their pockets and their back pockets. I think they then what do you do as far as enforcement? How strict do you get? All those questions come up.
Yeah, for sure. It would be. I was a kid once. You were a kid once. We find ways to get around things, and it could cause a lot of conflict. But I think I know that that's coming up, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. So in one of the, I don't know about protecting Texas land and assets. That was part of the interim hearings.
Mhm.
I think that has to do, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think that has to do with the foreign investment in
Mhm.
Texas land. Um,
Correct.
I don't know if that's. I feel like that comes up. People get worked up in on both sides about that, and
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what's the next legislature look like? How does that look in the 89th?
I can't tell you exactly what it looks like.
Sure.
I can tell you that.
You don't have a crystal ball. You can't tell me exactly what everyone's going to
I
do.
wish I did. I'd be going to buy a lotto ticket or something. But I think that everything in life, in particular in the legislature, is about the details.
Yeah.
And if I said to you, we need to protect the land around our military bases. We should not allow for any of our foreign enemies or an agent or a citizen of a foreign enemy to own land adjacent to any of our military bases. We'd all probably agree to that. Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
absolutely. We probably would want to say, you know what, we're going to not allow it to be anywhere near electrical generation power plant or water plant or some sensitive infrastructure.
Yeah.
Um, but I think what we have to realize, though, at the moment that we limit who can purchase something, at that moment, then we're also taking from the person that owns it the ability to sell someone. There's a little bit of a taking now. We have to. So this is why you can't make it super broad where it's anybody whoever was born in this foreign country can't buy your property.
Yeah.
Now we're have the government in taking the ability to market your own land, and then you diminish the value in some way, shape, or form. So we have to be careful, because this country is got a long history and pride in private property rights,
Yeah.
and private property rights, I believe, are critical. It's what creates a healthy, robust environment for people to want to own land and invest in land and own their own home. But the moment that they feel that the government's just going to be willy-nilly passing laws that limit their ability to market or use their property as they best see fit, then we might have some. We're going to destabilize the market for that land. But that doesn't mean you can't find a happy medium in terms of making sure that property that is in a very critically sensitive place or location, that we can make that determination that we can't protect that. I think we should and we must protect all of our delicate infrastructure. Otherwise, would be careless.
Yeah, for sure. That's an aspect that I think a lot of people don't really, there is that middle ground that I think that is there, and that's probably, I don't know, if I had a crystal ball, it would probably tell me that's probably where it would go. So as far as education and there was an education interim hearing, sorry, uh, about reading and math readiness in Texas public schools. And it feels like just recently, I mean, it must have been a couple months ago, talking about the latest scores, and, kids are still falling behind from COVID, being home, and, the at-home learning and having trouble catching up. There's been some new developments with the state resources for education, having those online for anybody to access.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be further development in the reading and math readiness? Is this something that concerns you? I know that education is big on your priority list.
Without a doubt. I think, look, the studies all show that if you're not reading on grade level, usually by third or fourth grade, the probabilities of your dropping out of high school increase like 2 or 3 times. And so, the reality is that we teach people to read. We want them to read up until like third, fourth. We're trying to teach them the process of reading. But after that, they're reading for comprehension and in order to learn more, to gather more information.
Yeah.
And so it is the most foundational thing that is critically important, that we need to focus on as a society. People need to know how to read, how to write, how to do the arithmetic, the fundamentals of that even, we can probably all remember our parents talking about. And so I'm very concerned. I think that the last thing we need to do is to increase illiteracy rates in this state. When John Sharp used to be comptroller, the chancellor of Texas A&M, he would tell me that the companies that were looking to move, that were trying to evaluate which state to move to or establish their headquarters in or their plant, the two questions they would ask, the two first and foremost questions are, what is the average age of your population? So they could understand, what was their future workforce look like?
Yeah.
And what is the educational attainment of this area that we're looking to go into? And that is going to be really the determining factor for where companies go in the future. And so as a state, it doesn't matter. A lot of the other things that we do won't matter if companies don't feel that they have the capacity to fill the jobs, the good jobs in this community. And so when you don't have good educational attainment, then you're stuck with low paying jobs. And that's not a state that I want the future for all of our children.
Yeah, of course. So looking ahead, and I guess, looking in the past, you focused on education and healthcare, and it seems like that's, based on this conversation, something you still focus on, something you still think about, especially when it comes to children and everything like that, and the elderly. And I think that you've filed bills about elderly abuse, which is, I mean, I've personally been through it in my family, and it's really it's a weird thing that people do, and I'm glad that there's people there that are trying to fight back on that. Um, what are your priorities looking forward in the 89th legislature?
Well, there's a lot. It's hard. I'm a little frustrated that this last hurricane exposed the fact that we have not done enough to harden and create an electrical grid in Texas that is truly resilient and that's truly sustainable. I think, and it was a level 1 hurricane,
Yeah.
and God forbid that we get hit with a 2 or 3 or 4 in the future, and
Yeah.
what would happen. I think that as a state, we need to make investments in our basic infrastructure. And so when we talk about infrastructure, typically everybody thinks of the most basic terms, clean water, reliable power, clean air, good roads. But people also need to think about the fact that one of the most fundamental infrastructures for a healthy democracy is a good public educational system, neighborhood-based educational system, because that is what our founding fathers recognized, that children must, and it's why it's in our Constitution. That's one of the demands our founding fathers put on us as a state, that we must create a system of free and adequate, or I forget the exact adjective that was used.
Yeah.
But it was basically create a public education system that is equitable and allows all Texans, regardless of what neighborhood they're born, who they're born to, have the possibility to achieve whatever their God-given potential is.
Yeah.
That is a way that you provide every citizen the thought that, hey, you know what, if I work hard, I study hard, I do what I need to do and play by the rules, I can get ahead in this country. I can do something. giving people that hope is what's going to, continue to make our country great, continue to create a strong middle class. And that's what separates us from so many other countries around the world where it's all dependent on what class you're born into or who your parents were
Yeah.
or what part of the country you're born in. That is a frightening way to go. And that's why you see so many revolutions in these countries around the world where people just don't see another way out.
Yeah. So, final question. I want to be respectful of your time. So, you're a Democrat in a red state and in a red state house. How do you navigate that? It seems like you do it well. It seems like you just talking to you right now. It seems like you know sort of the how to massage the system a little bit, and I think that's kind of cool. I mean, it's maybe a skill that you picked up over time, right? Um, but how do you navigate with? There's obviously your colleagues on the other side of the aisle are going to have different priorities than you, and you want to represent your district. So how does that work?
I believe that the best training that I received for governance was at City Hall.
Yeah,
And when you think about city council members and the mayor, and I look back to when I was knocking on doors at the age of 27, and people would ask, "Oh, well, what party you in? What are you? How do you identify yourself?" And I'd say, "Well, I, I I'm really sorry, but let me tell you what I'm running to help reduce police and fire response times. How
yeah,
quickly can we get you an EMS or a fire truck or a police officer when you need it? I'm running to make sure that we have enough parks for our community in every part of the city. I'm running so that sidewalks in every part of the city are adequate for people who are challenged, that maybe have to move in a wheelchair.
yeah,
I'm running to make sure that we don't break our wheels and our cars get misaligned with potholes. I'm trying to work on everyday issues, common sense issues. And so none of these issues are partisan. And so I tried to bring that sort of that common sense approach, business sense approach to the state legislature. That's kind of the approach that I've always brought.
yeah,
Um, and so I try to solve problems. And let me tell you, I'll be the first one to tell you, the moment that Texas becomes like Washington, D.C., and I know that there have been a lot of people calling for this, where the party in the minority, their members aren't allowed to have any kind of leadership positions, aren't allowed to introduce bills, to pass bills. At that moment, I retire from politics
yeah,
because then at that moment, why am I taking time away from my family, from my job, from my community? Why am I losing, significant personal income to go do a volunteer job just to be a part of a show, to have press conferences or to yell at people or to blame people?
yeah,
I'm not interested in that. I want to solve problems. And I'll tell you that no party has the market on common sense. No party has the market cornered on good ideas. And I think the majority of what we try to work on is not really partisan. And I would hope that someday we get back to sort of a level playing field where we have equal numbers in the legislature, because the legislative sessions that I've worked where there's almost equal numbers of legislators from both parties, that's when we get the best product, because both parties are vetting the bills. And like the old saying goes, iron sharpens iron. So
yeah,
you're really studying closely what either party, and only the best ideas come through. And crazy, hyper, you want to call them on my team. If someone might say the word hyper liberal, or someone
yeah,
might say crazy right wing, or on the other side, these ideas don't make it, don't make
yeah,
it to the finish line, because what we need to do is common sense. And the majority of Texans consider themselves independents. The majority of Texans think of themselves, I want to vote for the best person for the job. And unfortunately, due to gerrymandering and redistricting, there are certain seats that only a person out of a certain party is going to get elected.
yeah,
And so the primaries make all the difference in the world. And so I would just hope that we can still try to work to get us back to the middle, to where we can make all the difference in the world. We can work together and come up with the best solutions. And that's how I try, what I try to do.
yeah,
I try to just be kind. I think too, it doesn't do any good to.
Sometimes the simplest stuff that works the best.
It's always the simplest stuff, man. It's always just be a decent human being, talk to people, and don't take it for granted, or don't assume that people are that don't believe everything you hear about someone. Get to know them for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Senator Jose Menendez of District 26 in Bexar County, I really appreciate you taking the time. Is there a social media or website that you wanted to plug?
What is it? Menendez for Texas.
Okay.
Is that what it is, Cynthia? Menendez for Texas. As you can tell, I don't, yeah, Menendez, the number four.
You're not going to be one of the kids in school that gets caught on social media.
No, Menendez for Texas is where we have all of our, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or what else do we do?
All sorts of stuff. We'll find it.
Twitter or X, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, just those three apparently is all we're doing at this time. And I'm kind of glad. I don't want to be, I've been asked to get on TikTok and I'm like, no.
I'm sure you're a great dancer. Come on, you should do it.
No, you don't want to see me dance. No, thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. We'll talk again soon.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.